We've just witnessed one of the most dominant performances in ATP Finals history. Jannik Sinner is tearing the tour apart and no one can touch him. The title in Turin marks the perfect ending to one of the best seasons in tennis history, and while most of us saw it coming, Sinner surprised us yet again with some of the things he did last week. Here's the full breakdown behind Sinner's title run, my tactical analysis, the numbers behind his incredible season, and everything in between. Sinner took down Alex de Minaur in his first match at the ATP Finals, and let's just say we all expected that, judging from their head-to-head record, current form, and literally every other predictive metric out there. Being that it was his first match since the Shanghai title win about a month ago, we saw some early rust from Sinner in the first set. He got broken in the third game and was serving 63% on his first serve, with 6 winners and 10 unforced errors in the first set. Yeah, so Sinner didn't have the fastest start to the match. However, he found his rhythm midway through the set and was able to bully de Minaur. Sinner then raised his level in the second set to wrap things up in 85 minutes at the Inalpi Arena. Looking back at the match, which happened to be Sinner's first in Italy this year, I was really impressed to see the amount of fight that de Minaur put up. Despite Sinner having the much superior offense, de Minaur was able to punch back and was winning the longer rallies more often than not. But in the end, Sinner was hitting so hard from the baseline that de Minaur didn't have much of a chance at doing what he knows how to do best, which is tracking down shots, taking them early, and redirecting. In short, he couldn't execute any of the key elements of his game effectively. Sinner was also using the slice more and was at home at the net, which just speaks volumes about how well-rounded he's become. For de Minaur, he has now lost all 8 of his matches against Sinner and has only taken 1 set off the Italian. Here's what Alex had to say.
His just ball speed is, in my eyes, so much higher than basically the rest of the people.
But revenge was on the menu when Sinner and Fritz clashed in the second match. Sinner had beaten the brakes off Fritz at the US Open final just a couple of months ago, and we all waited to see the move Fritz was about to pull out of his pocket. To Taylor's credit, he was committed to playing proactive, aggressive tennis even when it wasn't always rewarded. Fritz was fired up in the first set and he held his own, until the very last minute when the scoreboard pressure got to him while serving to stay in the set. He made a couple of errors, a loose volley, a forehand unforced error, and a poorly timed drop shot to give Sinner 2 set points. Of course, you can't get away with that. Sinner snatched the first set, but the thing that stood out to me most was how he was able to punish Fritz on the second serve. You see, Fritz is one of the best servers in the world. He has the second most aces this year, only 23 behind Zverev, despite playing 14 fewer matches. Fritz is in the top 5 for percentage of first and second serves won, and percentage of service points won in general. Still, Sinner was able to hold Fritz to a measly 3 out of 11, or 27% on second serves in the first set of their round-robin match. How did that happen? Fritz hits a good kicker on the second serve, but even with that, Sinner's return is so insane that he can either put a lot of pressure on the kick serve, or at the very least, neutralize it. Riding the momentum from the first set, Sinner continued to pile lots of pressure on Fritz's service games, and just like in the first set, it paid off at the last minute again as Sinner broke Fritz to win the match. I thought it was one of the tournament's best matches. The level from both players was out of this world, but when it came to the crucial points, Sinner was just unplayable. And you get the feeling that Fritz would have been wondering what else he could have done because you literally have to be perfect against Sinner. 1 or 2 bad decisions and you're cooked. Entering the final round, Sinner was up against a familiar foe in Medvedev. Medi had just beaten de Minaur and was still in the conversation for progressing to the semis at the time, so it was definitely a high-stakes match for both players. Except that there was the usual deja vu feeling to it. Both players raced out of the blocks with easy holds in the first 5 games. But as the set wore on, Sinner was the one making all the impact on the return, with Medvedev leaking a lot of errors and doing absolutely nothing on the return himself. A couple of shaky forehands from Medvedev in the 8th game gifted Sinner the break, and the Italian had an easy hold to take the first set 6-3. Just like that, all hopes of Daniil making it to the semis were dashed to pieces. Now feel free to put all the blame on Sinner. I mean, Jannik was so greedy that he didn't even let Medvedev win a single point off first serve returns. With nothing to lose now, Medvedev decided to go out with a bang, so he threw caution to the wind and was now defending a lot better. He also worked with slimmer margins on the attack and mixed things up, but Sinner was up to the challenge. Jannik got an early break, but Medvedev still wasn't going down without a fight. He eventually recovered the break to get back on serve. Medvedev then let himself down with a couple of backhand errors in the 9th game, and Sinner served for the match in his typical cold-blooded fashion. A perfect 3-0 finish for the second consecutive year to top the Ilie Nastase group. Here's how Sinner's head-to-head was against Medvedev in March last year, and here's how it's looking now, with Sinner winning 8 of their last 9 encounters. You get the feeling that Daniil is sick and tired of losing to Sinner at this point. But really, how do you beat this guy? The consensus for many fans now is that Jannik is the equivalent of Djokovic in terms of consistency, but Jannik just happens to be the more aggressive version. Do I agree with that hot take? Maybe, to some extent, I guess. The consistency has been unreal, and there are definitely some similarities between Sinner's game and Novak's. They're both like machines, they just don't miss, and their movements also have some similarities too. But if there's any consolation for Medvedev fans, it might be that he didn't make any double faults against Sinner. Can't remember the last time that happened. Medvedev's serve fell apart this season, and there was this snowball effect on the rest of his game. But if 2025 is going to be the revenge tour for Medvedev, y'all better sign me up for it. At this point, it's probably a good time to let y'all know that I've been taking my tennis a bit more seriously, and I've even had the chance to train with a few pro players. SuckerPunch's hydration shooters have helped me level up my endurance, and you can try them too. In fact, if you use the code Courtside-Punch at checkout, you'll get 25% off your order, so what are you waiting for? Give them a try and let me know how they work for you. Anyways, back to the video. Jannik collided with Ruud in the semis, and let's just say it didn't end well for Casper. Oh, hold on, let me rephrase that. It was a complete beatdown, to say the least. Again, it's not like Casper played badly or anything. He just had Sinner breathing down his neck, and there was little he could do about it. For starters, Ruud hadn't met this version of Sinner before. In fact, the last time they played was in 2021. On his part, Ruud had done a great job of messing up everyone's semifinal predictions. Heck, I could have been a perfect 4 for 4 on predictions in the ATP Finals video I made last week. My semifinalists would be Sinner, Zverev, Alcaraz, and Fritz. Fair play to Ruud for deciding to end the year with a bang after having a poor second half of the season. The semifinal was a video game, except that only one person's controller was working. Sinner was going ballistic off both ground strokes, and Ruud was confined to working hard to defend and counterpunch whenever the chance came. Unfortunately for Ruud, those chances just didn't exist. Instead, he was dealt relentless power, precision, and depth from Sinner. The first set was over in a hurry as Sinner served Ruud a breadstick in 30 minutes. One of the things that stood out to me was the fact that Ruud's backhand was no match for Sinner's backhand on the cross-court exchanges. And Ruud not being able to flatten his ground strokes didn't do him any favors either. It might have been a different story on clay, but we'll have to wait till next year to see how that plays out. Anyway, it was rinse and repeat in the second set. Sinner with the ball-striking masterclass, Ruud adjusting to Sinner's tempo, and doing everything in his power to stay alive. Midway through the second set, Ruud already looked like a beaten man. The errors were leaking off his racket, especially off the backhand, and the bad decisions were becoming more and more frequent. That's literally what Sinner does to you. He forces you into trying too hard because there's literally no other way out. You go for broke, try to aim for the lines, switch up the rhythm, or do something different. While you may find some success, it mostly just leads to more errors. That's at least how I see it. Another way Sinner forces you into making more errors is by actually overpowering you from the baseline and forcing you to either go for a low percentage shot or put the ball in the net. So here you are, making mistakes on both offense and defense, a lose-lose situation. Sinner beating the world number 6 in 69 minutes and almost making him look like an amateur was definitely a statement win. Ruud, in fact, might have been relieved after the last point. According to him, the difference between facing Sinner and Djokovic is that Jannik hits a faster ball than Novak. He doesn't let you breathe. But with Novak, you can play more rallies and not be terrified of him ripping the ball apart like a bomb down the line or cross-court. Interesting take from Ruud there. What do you make of those comments? Having booked his ticket to the final, Sinner became the first player to reach the final without dropping a set since Novak Djokovic in 2018. The stage for the final was set. Fritz had just taken down Zverev for the 4th time in 4 months, and now it was time to tame Sinner once and for all. The lessons from the US Open and the round-robin matches had been learned. The task was simple. Serve well, be aggressive, mix things up, and most importantly, don't make any mistake. Not sure about that last part though, because how do you not make a mistake? Entering the final, Taylor had spent more time on the court, having played back-to-back 3-setters against de Minaur and Sasha, but we weren't worried about the fatigue because of the dog in Fritz. Fritz had now become the first American to reach the final since James Blake in 2006, and here's what was on the line for both players. Here's how both players stacked up before the final. Fritz with the better serve and not too far away on the ground strokes. Just like Sinner, Fritz is a natural ball striker and can hit with a lot of pace, but the biggest difference is Fritz's relative lack of movement compared to Sinner. A few fans felt disappointed that Fritz made it to the final at the expense of Zverev because they felt Zverev would have done a better job at competing against Sinner. After all, his level was closer to the Italian, but after watching how the final played out, I don't know if Zverev would have done any better. Fritz threw the kitchen sink at Sinner and literally did everything that was required of him. He was putting on a serving clinic and also redlining his shots for the most part. However, when it came to the clutch moments, Fritz couldn't raise his level, so he paid the price for it. In the first set, both players were destroying the balls. Fritz was able to go toe-to-toe with Sinner on the forehand and backhand exchanges, and although Sinner had the slight edge, Fritz pretty much held his own. With the first set level at 3-all, Sinner made his move because Fritz was no longer finding his spots with the big serve. We saw a loose, loopy forehand from Taylor and a double fault for the first time. He tried to redeem himself with some aces and service winners, but just couldn't shake off Sinner completely. Sinner eventually got the break at the third look, and the Italian consolidated the break with a flurry of aces in the next game. 3 aces in one game? So here we are expecting Fritz to do the most damage on the serve, but it ends up being Sinner. Sinner is now serving for the first set, but it's Fritz who's forcing the action. They get to 30-all, but Sinner serves an ace. They eventually go to deuce, and Fritz is about to get a break point, but Sinner then responds with the service winner before wrapping up the set with yet another ace. Seeing Sinner play his best tennis under pressure was perhaps the biggest difference in the set. Knowing that Sinner tops the chart with a 64% winning ratio on returning second serves, Fritz knew he could no longer afford to give Sinner any looks at his second delivery. On top of that, he would now need to open up the court and work with more angles rather than trying to blow Sinner off the court. Fritz keeps his nose in front for the first 4 games, but a poor decision on the drop shot gives Sinner a break point in the 5th game, and he eventually gets it done at the second time of asking. Fritz continues to search for answers, tinkers with his return strategy, and plays aggressive tennis. Still, even his best shots are returned to his feet because Sinner also adjusts on the return to take giant cuts at the ball. Nothing can stop Jannik at this point, and he eventually seals the deal after 1 hour and 25 minutes. Here are my takeaways from the match. I thought this was Fritz's best performance against Sinner. It was a lot better than the US Open and even better than the round-robin match. Fritz got broken when the balls were at their fluffiest, and it makes you wonder how big a problem the ball issues are because we've seen a few players complain. Medvedev and Zverev specifically have been super vocal about it. Medvedev said that the balls favor power players. Fritz said that he struggled to generate power with his backhand when the balls were worn out. I might maybe go down a rabbit hole on tennis balls because it seems that the problem is that the balls are slower, less consistent, and don't last as long as they did a couple of years ago. Anyways, that's a subject for a different day. Another takeaway from the final has to do with Sinner outserving Fritz in the match. How the heck did that happen? Sinner wasn't just serving lights out, he did it when it mattered the most. 14 aces, 90% of first serves won. Look at where all the aces landed. Pure precision. Sinner also hit the backhand down the line a lot better than Fritz on Sunday. That's one area that I think Fritz could have done better because each time that he settled into the cross-court exchanges, Jannik switched up on him with a beautiful redirection that gave Fritz no chance. A few examples that come to mind are the 3rd point of the first game of the first set, and at 40-all in the 5th game of the second set. I should also mention that Sinner used the drop shot to perfection, using the perfect disguise to add that extra element of surprise that makes it so effective. He did this in crucial moments in both sets, and it goes without saying that the gap between Sinner and Alcaraz in terms of variety is shrinking rapidly. But what does Sinner's win in Turin actually mean? What do the numbers say? Jannik is the first Italian player in history to win the ATP Finals. Sinner is the first man to win the ATP Finals without dropping a set since Ivan Lendl in 1986. I should also add that he was only broken twice all tournament. He has also set the record for the fewest games lost on the way to an ATP Finals title with 33. Jannik didn't drop more than 4 games in any set. He's also the first player since Andy Murray in 2016 to earn 70 or more match wins in a season. 17 top 10 wins this season, more than any other man on tour. Sinner becomes the 3rd man in history to win the Australian Open, US Open, and the ATP Finals in a single season after only Federer and Djokovic. A 70-6 record for the season and a 92% match win percentage, a 50-3 record on hard courts for the season, 8 titles for the year, including 2 slams, the ATP Finals, 3 Masters 1000s, and 2 500s, and the year-end #1, and almost $23 million in prize money, a record for the highest prize money ever earned on tour in a single season. The point is, we could go on and on with the records. But let's also give a shout out to Fritz because he played great on Sunday. On top of that, he's breaking new ground. A career-high number 4 after starting the year outside the top 10, multiple titles in big finals, 10 top 10 wins, and new levels of confidence. It's simply amazing. We've seen crazy comparisons with Sinner in the Big Three, particularly when it comes to Djokovic. Sinner's 2024 season has been, no doubt in my mind, one of the best in tennis history. It's crazy to think that as good as Sinner's year has been, he'll need to replicate this kind of season a whopping 12 times to touch Novak at slams. What separates the Big Three from Alcaraz and Sinner is a combination of quality and longevity at the highest level. That's something I'm looking forward to from both guys in the coming years. Speaking of Carlos, here's how 2024 became his best season.